Well, good afternoon and welcome to H360 Live. My name, once again, is Dave Duplay. I'm sorry about the difficulty that we had the first go around, but I think we have it straightened out now. And joining me in the studio today is my colleague from h360, Courtland Long. Courtland, how are we doing once again?
I'm doing so well. How are you?
I'm doing well. These technical difficulties just happen. When you're broadcasting live, you got to expect it from time to time, but I think all is good, and we've got audio back, and I'm hoping we look fine on camera.
Yeah, you gotta take it in stride.
Take it in stride. Did you have a good weekend?
I had a great weekend. How was yours?
Well, we went to Connecticut. We did some filming, had a wonderful lunch with Cam and Judy.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, it was a good day.
It was very nice.
Yep. Well, we have a very exciting show for you today. We have Kathy Gurland coming into the studio in just a little bit. Kathy is a cancer navigation consultant. She helps patients and caregivers get through the cancer journey. She's got an incredible journey that she's going to share with us, her personal story. She'll be joining us in just a minute. But Courtland, you know, as we do every week, we always try to feature an interesting article or a health tip. This week's interesting article is called The Fitness Craze, What's Hot and What's Not. And you know, we're out and about every day in New York City. We're walking to different meetings. We go to lunch. We go to the subway, and it seems like every day I'm seeing more and more fitness centers pop up, whether it be Planet Fitness or New York Sports Club, or what I'm seeing now is a lot of boutiques, a lot of hot yoga studios, a lot of cycling studios. And some of these workout routines, it's all the rage right now. They've grown in popularity. We see these gyms popping up, and this interesting article that we read features Dr. Scott Weiss. He is a certified athletic trainer, so he knows a lot about working out. He knows a lot about these specialty routines and exercise programs, and he lists a few of them that seem to be hot right now. Also, on the other side of the coin, he lists some things that you need to be careful of when you're working out. So, Courtland, for our audience, let's take them through the ones that Dr. Weiss says is hot, and then let's talk about what people need to be aware of and cautious of.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this. I think with the advent of the fitness tracker and then all these little boutique gyms popping up, I think it's indicative that a lot of people are getting very into their health, and I think that's really fantastic. So the first workout regimen that he talks about is high intensity interval training, and that's also known as HIIT. And this is short, high energy intervals with short work rest times in between. So you'll be working really hard for about 3 minutes, and then you have 30-second rest and you get right back into it. Now this is designed to get your heart pumping and burn massive amounts of calories in a really short amount of time. And this workout is particularly hot because HIIT workouts are the best way to burn a lot of calories, and so they are a great weight loss program. Yeah,
you know, they do burn a lot of calories, but Dr. Weiss says that there's some things you need to be careful of, and proper form when you're doing a HIIT workout is really important. You've got to maintain proper form. I think HIIT, you're working out larger muscle groups, if I'm not mistaken. And so, you know, if you're not doing it in the proper form, you're going to work out some groups of muscles, and other muscles you're going to neglect. So again, proper form, focus on doing it right. And if you're getting a little tired, take a little rest, get the form right, and it's gonna pay off in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I do some insanity at home when I can't get to the gym, and that's a form of high intensity interval training. And they always say, if you feel your form is suffering, take a break. You know, your muscles might be getting fatigued, and you don't want to injure yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the second one that we are going to feature?
So the second one is spin class, and this is becoming hugely popular in New York. There's tons of spin gyms popping up all over the city. It's like there's one on every corner. They're more popular than Starbucks, I feel like. And this also comes with a high calorie burn. There's a limited amount of space in all the classes, so that kind of has a little bit of an exclusivity feel to it, which makes it a little bit more desirable for a lot of people. Now, Dr. Weiss says that this workout is particularly hot because with the high energy burn and the high caloric burn, that this is a great way to get people more interested in other activities such as road biking and mountain biking.
Yeah, you know, I really love spin. I'm new to it. So some of the orders that the instructor is kind of yelling out, it's new to me, but I watch what's going on and I try to, you know, do the best I can. But Dr. Weiss also says that if you're only doing spin, and I think this is probably true with cardio, you may plateau out. So spin is good for one part of your routine. Cardio is always good, right, to get the cardio workout in. But you should also incorporate some weightlifting in your regimen. Now, in spin, here's the important part, because you're spinning and you're in the saddle and you're out of the saddle and you're moving around, and proper form here again is important. And if you have lower back pain, you got to really be careful, because spin, you're kind of crouched down on the bike, you're raising up out of the saddle. So I can see where it would put strain on your lower back if you have those issues.
Yeah, it certainly would, but there are some spin gyms in the city that are really taking it to the next level. There's an underwater spin gym, and there's also a place that has weights with the bike itself. So while you're spinning, you're also doing some upper body weightlifting.
Wow. Now, Courtland, I'm scuba certified.
Yeah.
But if I weren't, and I took this underwater spin class, do you think I could do scuba and spin at the same time, kind of a twofer?
I think you might deplete that oxygen tank pretty quickly.
I think so. I think you're right. Well, spin class is good. I enjoy it. High intensity, good calorie workout, all the way around good for you. May plateau out. Got lower back pains, be careful with that one.
Absolutely. So the next one is CrossFit, and this is a hardcore approach to fitness, and it combines body weight exercises with cardio. Now, CrossFit is particularly hot right now because it emphasizes the full body workout, which is something that a lot of these exercises we've been talking about haven't really been focusing on. And it combines Olympic-style weightlifting, acrobatic training, gymnastics, martial arts, and functional movements, and it's one of the best physical workouts in the world.
Wow, it seems like it, right? High intensity. Now, here's what Dr. Weiss has to say about this one. It could be a stage for injury. You're really doing a lot. You're lifting heavy weights, and I think when you're in a CrossFit and you're in a class, you're going to try to overdo it. You're going to try to keep up with the person next to you or the person in front of you or behind you. You might try to lift a little too much, so you got to really be careful about that. Again, in all of these exercises, proper form and executing the exercise in the right way is really key.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to do CrossFit when I lived in Philadelphia, and I did feel a little bit of pressure, even if it was just pressure I put on myself, to move up in weight probably a little faster than one should. And so the last one that we're going to talk about here today, and no pun intended with how hot today is, but this last one is hot yoga. And this requires the yoga room to be heated to upwards or more than 100 degrees for the whole hour-long class. Now, this workout is particularly hot because the great sweat that you develop throughout the class allows your body to release the toxins, which also gives you that very euphoric feeling after the class. And the increased heat also makes your muscles loose enough that you can sort of get into some of the poses a little bit easier.
Yeah, here's what Dr. Weiss has to say about hot yoga. Dizziness and lightheadedness is not uncommon, right? You're in there, think about it, you're doing yoga and the room is over 100 degrees, it's very hot. So if that's the case, you gotta stop, you gotta drink a little water if you're feeling dizzy or lightheaded. The other thing is your muscles achieve increased elasticity when you're in the hot yoga. And so, you could overdo it and not know it during that time because your muscles are relaxed, they're hot, you're in that yoga room. Now, when you wake up the next morning, you're gonna know it, right? Because you've overdone it, so you gotta really, really be careful in the hot yoga. But I have not done it, Courtland, but I'm wanting to do it.
You should.
I'm thinking that I may have to have a private lesson to start because I don't know the poses,
do you find most
and
popular
I'm
today?
naturally a little dizzy and lightheaded at times. So I gotta really be careful on that one.
You should absolutely go. I do hot yoga down the street. Don't be self-conscious. Everyone's practice is their own. It's a communal learning experience. But be prepared throughout the day to drink a lot more water than you normally do because you don't want to become dehydrated in the class.
Well, good point. Great article. Great advice from Dr. Weiss. If you like it, you chat to the right. Courtland, as we do every week, we sent the interns out on the streets of New York to see what the New Yorkers had to say about the workout regimen. And so you want to watch the video?
I absolutely do.
Okay, roll it, Twig.
What fitness trends do you find most popular today? And if so, can you name any of them? ones that require large groups and ones that require a regimen, such as CrossFit.
A lot of my friends still do things like Zumba and yoga.
No, I kind of do the same thing and have forever, so I really don't know what's popular today.
Fitness trends.
Yeah.
Like specific workouts?
Yeah.
I would say squats, burpees, maybe jumping jacks, and probably running, like running track.
So the next question is, do you participate in any fitness groups such as the spin class, yoga, or CrossFit?
Oh yeah, CrossFit is one of them. Yeah, I like to do yoga a lot. I try and go once a week.
No, I do not.
Okay, so since you don't, do you try to work out on your own?
Yeah, I haven't been to the gym in a while, but I do work out at home, maybe like 30 minutes before I come to work.
No, I don't, but I do jujitsu, which is, I guess, similar in a way.
No, personally, I just prefer to work out alone. I'm a huge runner, but I've never ever ran a race.
Why do you think fitness trends are so popular today?
I think more people are trying to be healthy.
Why is any trend popular? Because it's like new, it's cute, it's innovative.
In our culture, there's such a pressure to be healthy, and sometimes that can be obviously miscued.
I think there's a growing awareness around people, a growing health awareness. People are more concerned about what they eat, what's going into their body, and what they're doing with their body.
How often do you try to work out?
I try for every day, but I go in intervals. I could work out every day for like a month, and then probably not for another 2 weeks.
Probably like 5 to 6 times a week.
I try and walk the 10,000 steps every day. I have an iPhone in my pedometer.
I probably do some form of workout 6 or 7 days a week.
Well, Courtland, what did you think about that?
Oh, I love that video. Everybody seemed a little bit in tune to different fitness regimens, and that one guy even does jujitsu.
I want to do jujitsu as well, right? I think jujitsu could be a twofer for me.
Yes.
It could give me a good workout, and it would teach me how to defend myself here in the city.
That's something you need in New York.
You do need it in New York, so the next time somebody cuts in line at the deli, at the salad bar, I could give them a karate chop.
Would Mr. Miyagi be proud of that?
Mr. Miyagi would probably not be proud of that, right? I'll have to go back and watch that movie once again. But
Yeah.
Interesting article. Our interns didn't disappoint. Our native New Yorkers in Bryant Park didn't disappoint. A lot of good information. Well, Courtland, now is our favorite time of the show. We have our guest coming into the studio. Kathy Gurland is a licensed clinical social worker. She is a cancer navigation consultant based here in New York City. After several years of clinical work as a medical social worker and private psychotherapist specializing in psycho-oncology, pain, palliative, and end-of-life care, she launched a private practice called PEGS Group. We're going to hear all about that here shortly. But PEGS Group was conceived and designed by Kathy to bridge the gap and meet the vital needs of the cancer community that the healthcare system is unable to provide. In Courtland, we hear a lot about the shortcomings of some of our healthcare system. Kathy has an amazing personal story, which was the genesis and foundation for PEGS Group. We're going to hear about that. Kathy, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for coming in on such a warm day here in New York City.
Probably won't be taking that hot yoga class up.
No,
I'll just walk to the subway will be my hot yoga class.
Yeah,
for
well,
the
watch the elasticity and don't overdo it. For sure, drink lots of water. So PEGS Group, the inspiration was fueled by both your professional career and your personal story. And so I want to talk first about your personal journey, and then we'll talk a little bit about PEGS Group. So let's get started there.
Yes, Kathy, we understand, unfortunately, you lost two sisters, Judy and Peggy, to cancer. Both were diagnosed late stage. Both sadly passed in their 40s. Can you share with us which sister was diagnosed first and what was she diagnosed with?
Sure. My older sister, Judy, who was a kindergarten teacher in Vermont, she was diagnosed with melanoma, skin cancer. And sadly, from diagnosis to death was only 7 months. It was advanced, and she did come to New York to get a second opinion. But at that time, I knew nothing. I didn't even have my bachelor's degree then. I was still working in other fields, and I just was her sister. That's all I could be, was her supportive sister. But several years later, my younger sister, Peggy, she was diagnosed with non-small cell lung cancer. Now, by then, I had gotten my master's degree. I had worked in an oncology unit. I had worked in end-of-life care. I had worked in the emergency room. So now I was prepared.
So how much time had passed?
Oh, between the two sisters?
Between the two.
About
It must have been a while. You've gotten these advanced degrees,
Right.
and so you're
I would
practicing.
say about 6 to 7 years in between.
6 to 7.
6 to 7 years in between.
And remind me once again, your second sister was diagnosed with?
Non-small cell lung cancer, Peggy.
Okay.
That's what she had. And that also was diagnosed at late stage, stage 4. But now I was in the position with my degree and my license and my experience so that I could become her advocate. I was by her side. I went to every doctor's appointment with her. I did all her medical paperwork. I was with her the entire time. And so it made a difference that I could go in and I had ammunition, I had knowledge, I had information. That world was not foreign to me anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't feel intimidated by walking into the healthcare system because I'd been working in it.
Okay, so here's my question for you. We hear a lot from patients, from caregivers, from survivors, that when you're diagnosed, you have to separate the emotional part of the diagnosis from the clinical and medical part of the diagnosis. Now, sister number one, that was easy because you had really no professional, right? So you were her sister. It might have been a little easier, but so now you've got these advanced degrees. Your second sister, how did you personally, as helping your second sister, how did you separate the personal part of the diagnosis from the clinical or medical part of the diagnosis?
This may sound simple, but what I would do would be, I would be my sister's sister when we were alone and let her tell me, vent, make decisions. But then the minute I stepped into any facility, an institution, a clinic, I became a worker. So I switched gears, and now I had to do my job. So I framed it as, this is my job. You are now being hired by your sister, even though I wasn't, and that was how I was going to approach these people because I could speak their language, I could interact with them, and if I became emotional, I was no help to my sister, and I was no help to the clinicians either.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So did you rely on any kind of outside advice to help either one of your sisters through the cancer navigation?
Absolutely, with Peggy. One of my dearest friends was working for cancer care at the time. She's also a licensed clinical social worker. She was the first person I called. I also had colleagues who I was working at hospice at the time, so I had a lot of nurse practitioners and 2 doctors. So yes, anytime I was really confused myself, I would get on the phone with any of them, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And so your company, PEGS Group, we understand that PEGS means a couple of different things. The P is personal, E, education, G, guidance, and S for support. So can you walk us through a little bit how your personal experience helped you to form PEGS Group and what your mission statement is?
Sure. While I was going through Peg's diagnosis with her whole journey, I was just in operation mode. I need to do what I need to do, and I didn't have any time to sit down and really think about it until the very end, of course, and then you think about it. But during that process, at one point, her partner said, you know, Kathy, what do people do that don't have you? And didn't pay much attention to it when he said it at the time. But then after Peggy died, and I had some time to sort of like let my own emotions, and I could go to my own therapy and process my own feelings of loss, that statement just stayed in my head. What do people do that don't have you? What do people do? And that's when I said, you know what? People do need this. They need somebody to advocate for them, to interpret, to do the translation of the medical terms, all of this. And I took my time and I started thinking, what do they need? Well, they need guidance, and as I was writing all these things on a piece of paper, all the things that patients need, there it was, PEGS, personal education, guidance, and support. And that was Peggy's name. Mm-hmm. This was I was meant to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was meant to do this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So let's shift gears a minute here. So now you're working full-time as a cancer navigation consultant, and you've developed this nice practice in New York City. You've got clients who are patients and probably working with caregivers and families.
Yeah.
So tell our audience exactly, what is a cancer navigation specialist, and how do you engage with the people that come to you and hire you to help them through the journey?
That's a loaded question. It's a good question. A cancer navigator, this is a term that's being used in all across the nation, but there's different definitions. There's a cancer navigator, there's a breast cancer navigator, there's a nurse navigator, there's an outreach navigator. So the term navigator has become spread out amongst different roles. What I like to tell people to do is always ask. The minute you get a diagnosis or your loved one gets a diagnosis, the first thing you ask is, do you guys have a cancer navigator? Is there a cancer navigator at your facility? If there's one in-house at the facility, that navigator is going to be your best friend, because they're going to take you through the ropes, show you where this is, how to connect to this doctor and this nurse and all the services. So always ask, is there a navigator? It doesn't matter what kind of cancer you have, just is there a cancer navigator in your staff right now? I do it privately. I'm a private cancer navigator. The reason I chose to go private was because I don't want to be affiliated with any one institution or any one hospital. I want anybody who calls me, it doesn't matter where you're getting your treatment, it doesn't matter who's your doctors, I don't have a loyalty to any institution. So I follow your wishes. You direct me. You tell me what you need, and I follow your advice.
Yeah, that's great. You've written a very interesting article recently, one that Courtland and I enjoyed reading. And the article was What You Can Control, and the answer is your attitude and your approach to living a full life. And I subscribe to that personally, right? Because I think we all control the life that we want to live. Now, we're all dealt a hand of cards.
Absolutely.
Right? And the cards that you have, that you're dealt, are the cards that you have.
That's it.
But it's up to you how you play that hand.
You got it.
Right? And so I enjoyed reading this article because I really resonate with it. There's so many insightful points here. Some that made me stop and pause, okay?
Sure.
Or to talk about those. Because the first one actually stopped me in my tracks a little bit and made me think. And the first point you make in your article is you say that a cancer diagnosis is not an emergency. Well, I put myself in the seat of a patient hearing those three words you never want to hear, you have cancer. And in my mind, the alarm went off and I broke out into a cold sweat, just imagining it.
Sure.
And it was a significant emergency in my mind. But so what do you mean when you say that a cancer diagnosis is not an emergency?
It's not an emergency because nothing has to be done immediately. If you're sitting there, David, and your doctor tells you you have cancer, you look perfectly healthy to me, and that happens more than not. People are very healthy, and all of a sudden they get this news. The reason I want to identify it as a crisis and not an emergency is because an emergency means we have to do things fast, right now, stop the bleeding, get the breathing. That's an emergency. With a cancer diagnosis, you're so better off if you take your time. You're going to be in shock, complete emotional shock. You won't even be able to process it in the beginning. But take your time, get support from loved ones, and make these decisions about treatment, about where you want to get treated, how do you want to be treated, when do you want to be treated. I do hear more often than not people saying, I really wish I did not just say yes to everything my doctor said. I really wish I had taken my time and really used my brain and tried to figure out what I wanted rather than responding emotionally. That's what I mean.
So with your clients, do you see a lot of mistakes that are made by those that rush and
yeah, actually, to be honest with you, I do.
Yeah.
And some of them are not permanent. Some of them can be reversed, but some of them are permanent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes along with introduce your healthcare team to the person behind the diagnosis.
Yes.
Can you walk us through that point?
Oh yeah, that's a big one for me. I'm very passionate about that one. Unfortunately, the healthcare system identifies you by your disease. There's the breast cancer patient, there's the diabetes patient, and it is so demeaning, number one. It negates our unique beings. We are each individuals, very unique, but that's what they do. So the burden falls on the patient to make yourself be known. Wear something bright, wear a fun hat, talk about politics, tell them a joke, tell them about your newest date you went on, whatever, but bring in with you something that makes you stand out. Because otherwise, I know the way they talk. It's, oh, the cancer patient in bed 2, in bed 6, it's by diagnosis. You are not your diagnosis. You are you, and do not let your diagnosis define you. So bring something personal. Even if you have to go to the hospital, I help people often. Bring your favorite bathrobe, bring your little stuffed animal, bring your bedspread that you like, but bring elements that makes you a person. You are a person, whether you're diagnosed with cancer or not, you are still a very valuable, unique person.
Yeah.
And also, this kind of falls along the lines that communication is a two-way street.
Yes.
So you're saying, you know, tell them a joke and things like that. So how can we make sure that this communication is going both ways?
Well, one of the things that I think is also important is that, yes, communication is a two-way street. We need to know who we self-assess. Well, what do I like? Well, do I listen well? Do I like people to be succinct? Do I like people to tell me things with a sense of humor? How do I hear? Because we all listen differently, we all hear differently. How do I hear, and what's my sort of style? And so maybe you may have to explain, look, when I'm answering you like this, it's because I get nervous. Or, you know, sometimes I make jokes when I'm nervous. But you want to let the practitioners know what is your style. I actually do better if you ask me questions, or I actually hear it better if you talk slower. But we need to know who we are, and then convey that to the clinicians, and then ask the clinicians to cooperate and help us in this two-way street of communication.
Yeah. Well, leading into communications, the other point you make in the article is to adopt a second language. Now, I'm sitting here thinking about the typical cancer patient who has a general practitioner, they have an oncologist, they may have a surgeon, they have a whole team of nursing staff around them. So, and they each, and all of those on the professional side, the healthcare professional side, speak clinical, speak medical,
Absolutely.
speak health speak, but they all speak it differently. The oncologist speaks it different than the RN or the PA. And so when you say adopt a second language, what does that mean? What second language, if you're a cancer patient, are you looking for them to adopt?
The second language that I'm referring to is being the language of an educated person, the language of somebody who wants information, not just a sitting back listening to somebody talk, and a language of being inquisitive. I want to know, what is an MRI? What's a PT scan? What's a this? What's a that? These clinicians might have said this 7,000 times this month, but for you, it's the first time you're hearing it. When you don't understand something, you stop. You say, excuse me, could you repeat that, please? Or you take notes. Or you say, now you keep saying MRI, but what is an MRI versus a CAT scan? So this second language is get yourself educated, find out these terms, ask them for them to be explained to you. If they're not being explained to you, look them up. But you need to go in there with all of your tools ready to go, saying, I want my information. I want to know. I am not going to be a passive recipient. I want to know, and this is my language. My language is I can talk to you on your level. You need to talk to me the same way.
Yeah, that's a real good point.
Yeah, being educated about your diagnosis
Yes.
and your treatment is so important.
And use that language back at them. They're like, when you say, oh, so when you want me to take my medicine PRN, they'll be like, oh, well, she knows what PRN means. Yes, it means as needed. So sometimes it's fun to throw those out there. You know, use their terminology, and they'll get it. They will.
One last one that I want to cover with you, I think is critical because a lot of people have trouble asking for help. And so your point is ask for what you need when you need it and let everyone know what you don't need.
Right. The what you don't need is the one that people forget because we're so afraid of being rude. People are dropping by your house to see you all day long. You're like, you know what, I really don't want to see these people, but we're afraid to hurt their feelings. What you don't need is equally as important as what you need. We have an easier time going, could you get me a grilled cheese sandwich, rather than saying, no, stop putting that vitamin thing in front of me. I don't want that anymore. But it is hard to ask for what we need because people look at it as a weakness. No, you need your strength. You need every ounce of energy in your body to focus on your health, to focus on moving forward, being positive. Ask away. People are not going to read your mind. They're not going to know. You have to say, please, can I have more Kleenex? Please, would you get me a box of Cheez-Its? You have to ask, and you've got to tell people, this is too much. Stop buying me presents, or stop bringing me cakes and goods, and just don't do it. If you ever have a need to do it. It's to do it when you get a diagnosis. Maybe you don't do it in the rest of your life, but when you get that diagnosis, you learn to ask for what you need and to tell people to back off when you don't need it.
Yeah, excellent point. The last one I want to focus on is something that you say in the article, and I need some clarification on it. You make the point that what's worked before may not work now. And so is that assuming I've been down the path in the journey before, or are you referring to others that have been down the journey? What does that mean when you say what worked before may not work now?
Cancer radically changes you. There's no two ways about it. It turns your world upside down. It changes your priorities and your perspective. So up until that moment, things work in your life. Certain friends are good to hang out with, certain family members are nice to be around, certain foods that you eat. But the minute you get diagnosed, you look at life very differently. So maybe that best friend of yours can't quite be there for you now. So maybe you can't be as close as possible. Maybe your routine of always going to family's birthdays and this and that, maybe that's not working for you now. So you need to reassess. You need to take seriously that you're a different person. Your therapist that you were going to, maybe they were good for what was going on then, but they have no idea what it's like to have cancer. So you will find that things look differently, and so you're going to need things that you didn't need before, but you're going to let go of things that were helpful before.
Yeah.
You really do find that you need different kinds of things than what you needed before. And not to be afraid to say, you were great, you were wonderful, but right now I need to be with those people because they understand me better, or they support me better, or whatever. So you're not stuck bringing everything with you into this new life with your new diagnosis.
Got it.
Well, Kathy, thank you so much for writing the Survivor's Compass. I love that you call it Survivor's Compass, not Patient Compass. And there are so many more great points in that article. And I would just want everyone to know that they can find it on www.pegsgroup.com. And they can find many more articles that you've written as well.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful article. You're doing great work.
Thank you.
Great work. Well, that's all we have time for today. I would like to thank once again Kathy for coming into the studio and sharing her story and all about Peg's Group. I would like to thank you, the viewers at home, for tuning in, and I'd like to thank our sponsors for making this all possible. Remember, all of our episodes can be viewed on demand at healthyho360.com. We can also be found on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Don't forget to use the hashtag #RealStories when posting. And our iPod, or our podcast, I should say, can always be found in the iTunes store. On behalf of myself, Courtland Long, and the entire HealthyO360 family, we hope you have a pleasant afternoon. We do look forward to seeing you again next week. We have one of our own in the hospital this week. Matthew, thumbs up, buddy. We hope you're doing well. We need you back at work here soon, so we hope you're resting and take good care. Thanks again for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.